It's your America. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the House of Representatives. It doesn't belong to the Senate. It doesn't even belong to the White House or the President. It's your America. It belongs to you and only you. What do we have to do to keep it? We always talk about that here, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit tonight. But the bottom line is, we are America, and we are the employer, and they are the employees. And that's the way it works. That's how the Constitution was set up, folks. So, welcome to the show. But before we get into it, each show, I started the last show that we had is honoring law enforcement officers who have been killed in the line of duty. And that is something near and dear to me because, one, I retired law enforcement 35 years, and it was a very sacred profession, one that I held close, near, and dear to my heart. And these officers are out there, and they are working each and every day to keep the streets safe. And we all know what they're up against and the politics that go with it and the reason it happens. And I mean, it's just no big secret out there. But they don't get into the politics when they're answering calls. They are affected by the politics. But when they respond to the calls, politics has no place in the decisions that they make. I want to talk about the Warren County Sheriff's Office. They lost for the for the sheriff's office. Deputy Jose Angel DeLeon died in the line of duty on December 4th after his patrol car crashed while he was responding to a domestic violence call. The 30-year-old deputy was traveling down a highway, what was 401 in the area, on December 4th. And on his way to the emergency call involving a firearm and a disturbance call, his patrol car hit a deer. North Carolina Highway Patrol First Sergeant Christopher Knox said Deputy DeLeon vehicle went off the roadway and then collided with the tree and caught on fire. Folks, that's pretty. It's just not a good sight. And first responders arrived to the scene, find Deputy DeLeon still inside a burning patrol car. They attempted to pull him out from the wreckage, but Deputy DeLeon succumbed to his injuries at the scene. And needless to say, our hearts, go out and to all the loved ones, his family, the Warren County Sheriff's Office, at least this time. And like I said, I've been back on December 4th, and it's January 1st today, but it doesn't make the pain go away, and it doesn't make the loss any easier. It takes time, and we really, really, really pray for that family, pray for that sheriff's office, and he left behind his girlfriend, and he left his son, and he's also survived by a family, which is his parents, his sister, and two brothers. So, and he has a really extended, huge family. So, let's keep them in our prayers because, like I said, you know, these guys are running in when so many people are running out, and he was working to protect somebody else. And it's just what they do. And as law enforcement officers, they don't think about the dangers and things that go on. You don't never know when that deer is going to run out or what's going to happen to you. Or a drunk driver, that tends to be some of the things that happen out there. So we just never know what the next moment beholds to the officers responding. I used to tell my children growing up that I will work real hard to come home just like I left, and that is on my own 2 feet in the front door, and still wanting to see them too. So, it's a family thing. We're a law enforcement family, so let's keep them in our prayers. And with that said, Mike, thanks for coming to the show. I really appreciate you checking in here on the New Year's Day for the new year.
And it's a great way to start the year off on a good program and having a good time talking about these things.
Absolutely. And, I think what we're going to do tonight, I don't have any, well, I'm not even acting like we ever have a script. We just throw it out there because I'm not even going to act like a script. We don't have scripts. Scripts are for Hollywood folks. We don't do that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk tonight about what was going on in 2022. What do we think 2023 is going to look like? And who knows, we might get a little 24, we might not. It just depends on where the conversation goes. And for the viewers and listeners out there, I do 1 hour shows now. I find that most of you, from what I understand, is for me in the the area and whatnot. The 1 hour shows work really good. It gives you the time frame, because I know we're all busy. It's past years and the New Year's, and if you ever waited till you could sit down and watch the entire show, it's a hit and miss. I do them in my car when I'm on my way to work. I just tune them into my car and I can listen to them, which I try to listen to all the shows on the network. And that's the nextgenusa.com network. So if you get a chance to see these shows, well, there's a whole bunch of them on there. A lot of topics, a lot of interest, a lot of funny stuff going on. A lot of, just direct. We bring it to you live. This is the way it works. We won't sugarcoat it. Like I said, for this show, it's your America. And welcome again to the show. So, Mike, what do you think? What do you think of the? I would say probably the biggest things from that we've learned from 2022 and what's going on throughout the country today.
That you should always question your government.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. We've had how many lies have Biden been caught in? I mean, from his repeated comments about the Second Amendment, you can't own a cannon. Yes, you can.
That's right.
It would never let you own a cannon. It always has. People. I recently did some of the numbers on it. There's over 732,000 machine guns that are owned in America right now. There's over 3.3 million rockets, fire flamethrowers, rocket launchers,
Right.
all the mines that are owned by Americans right now, this second.
Right.
That's not the problem. So, that's one constant lie we've heard. Oh, inflation is transitory. Well, that's not true. The economy's doing fantastic. Okay, tell me, anyone who's gone to the store, you go to a store right now, things are 25, 35, 45% more expensive if you can find it. But that's a great economy, supposedly. There's those lies. Oh, yeah, the Ukraine, if you're an American in Ukraine, find your own way home. But he loves Americans and he wants to protect us. Oh, Brittany Griner is the most important person in Russia to bring back home, even though she was guilty of the crime that she committed, and so was justly and correctly punished by the Russian government. Meanwhile, an American citizen, former Marine, Paul Whelan, is sitting there, and the United States is saying he's unjustly being held there. He's been convicted. He wasn't a spy, and we left him,
Yeah. Yeah. That's sad.
and he's innocent.
Yep.
But
That's
look
sad.
at the guilty person, but the guilty woman we got back, and we released the Lord. If you saw the movie with Nicolas Cage, the Lord of War,
Hmm.
this guy who's responsible for various warlords all across Africa, genocides happening across Africa, civil wars around the world, terrorism around the world, killing Americans around the world, and we let him go free so we could have a black lesbian basketball player who was guilty of the crime that she was convicted of.
Yep. And don't you know that basketball is how we save the world?
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently.
And we haven't even gotten to the really deep stuff, the stuff that's really like the food shortage.
Oh my gosh.
I mentioned inflation, but then there's a 30% less food in the world right now that we haven't heard a single thing from the Biden-Harris administration about how we're dealing with that, which is a year-long process. You can't fix that just over the winter. The food isn't there. You have to grow it. It's not going to happen. And part of the food, and even though there's a food shortage, we're still using part of the food that exists to make ethanol, which is destroying our oceans. We're instead of becoming energy independent, we're funding Venezuela, a country that has been the outbreak or the source of the outbreak of measles and mumps throughout the entire South America, and it's a 1,000% increase. We've seen that the people are starving to death. The government of Venezuela has killed its own people, as reported by the New York Times. And it's so bad down there, we had cut them off under the Trump administration. And now Biden's going in and funding them so we can get a little bit of oil from them, about 200,000 barrels a day. which is still short of the 2 million that OPEC just cut from us.
Right.
This, these are the insanities, and we still haven't gotten to the big, well, one of the biggest things I think of, Southeast Asia. Now, all this sounds like, oh, well, this is stuff happening all around. This is endangering Americans for many reasons, either because of terrorism, because of the consequences of other countries, how it affects our economy. But North Korea has been fired 75 missiles all year.
Right.
Okay. 75, including 3 New Year's Eve last night. They fired 3. So over 75 missiles were fired by them,
Right.
threatening South Korea and Japan, our allies that we have treaties with and contracts with to protect. Now, South Korea says this hasn't been so bad since 1953 when we had the ceasefire in the Korean War. Japan is looking at it and they said, wait a minute, it's so bad that we have a treaty with Japan since 1960 that says that the United States will be the military of Japan, protecting Japan. Japan is now building up a military of their own, spending $320 billion for their own military to build it in 5 years because they don't believe America's going to protect them.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it's on. You know, this has been decades in the work. You know, I mean, this is, you know, people used to laugh when our family members, and I've heard family members, especially the ones who served, is, you know, it's not Russia that you got to lock at. It's going to be China, 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 China. Everybody go, oh no, look at Russia, look at Russia. Well, yeah, Russia was a smokescreen for a lot of people, and we were looking at them. But the majority of people that, to me, I thought that we're the working class growing up.
Mm-hmm.
They talk more about China than they ever talk. And you know why? Because everything they picked up had China written on it.
Yep.
Everything they had, nothing said made in Russia. It said made in China. How do you conquer the world? You take over their money. You take over the products. You take over all the product chains, and you create and you make all this product like the medications. And then you know, think about what they're doing with that, you know.
Well, the food, remember there was, it was about 7 years ago, there was the milk contamination that was coming out of Russia that was being shipped here into the United States because of lead.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. Here's the problem. Because we've done nothing about this, China, especially because of the Obama administration turning us into a service economy instead of manufacturing, and we're 5 million manufacturing jobs short of where we were in 2000. This is because of the Obama administration's plan.
Yep.
The problem is, okay, who is making everything that we need? China.
Yep.
How do you fight someone who has all your stuff? If we want to do anything about it, they just slow down. They don't have to stop making stuff. They just slow it down and we collapse.
You know, like you said, China does it all. I mean, they're kind of like the global Walmart. They're the global Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's, you know, when people look at these businesses like Amazon, I truly believe they got their model from China. How do you make it work? Do what the Chinese have done. If you want to rule the world, follow their lead. You know, get into business. And, you know, China's always treated it like they wanted to be the strong arm of the globe. They wanted to be the superpower. And they've pursued every bit of that. While the United States has sat back and said, oh, let us flex and tell you how strong we are. They just sat back down and let everybody scream, yell about it, and continue to do what they did. Where we go in there and turn everything in and could be in compliance.
Well, that's because we're in terms of nations around the world, we're very young. Mm-hmm. I mean, very young nation. China is it's one of the oldest nations in history.
Oh, yeah.
They have a very long-term view. They don't need everything to happen tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It'll happen in the next 10 years, and that's just as good for them because they're not going. That's their point of view.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And I'll tell you, like I said, it's the product chain, everything is affected by what they do. I mean, they can make a decision. Everybody wants to say Russia's doing it. Russia's a smokescreen for what this administration wants to do. Um, our country was just as much behind starting that war in Ukraine and just as responsible for our actions and what we were doing. So the things that were going on, if you look at what you look at everything that tied to the administration for that district attorney and all the things that Ukraine was doing, and we got involved. To me, the thing is, we have to be careful what we get involved in because it'll take us directions we don't necessarily want to go. And you take Afghanistan. Look, we were there, right, wrong, or indifferent. We were still obligated to take care of our people to get them home. We were obligated, and we let them down. We put 13 or 14 officers, soldiers outside the gates to protect the interior. So when a terrorist bomb goes off, what's the thought process there? None.
Well, you got to remember, they also, to this day, there are some 5,000 Americans that were abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration on September 1st, 2021, and they're still there.
Right.
And the answer from the administration is, we just don't talk about that anymore.
Yeah. Well, we told them to make their way out of there, and okay, make their way out of there. Americans in Afghanistan dealing with the Taliban, who looks at every American as a terrorist, the enemy. That we're the terrorists,
The Taliban, ISIS, and Al Qaeda. There's
all
three major terrorist organizations that were funded by the Biden administration that got weapons and created an army because of the Biden administration. We have 5,000 of our people abandoned there. We have 10,000 Americans that we abandoned in the Ukraine this year. Remember February? Lester Holt?
Yep.
Biden said, we're not going to go in and save American citizens. We're going to leave. If it starts to be a shooting war or even before then, we're not going to get them.
He was clear.
Said that. No president's ever said that. That's stupid.
They have now.
Yeah.
The first and foremost, and that somebody said to me, for me, I was young when Jimmy Carter was running, and I remember the campaign, and I had just kind of started paying attention to politics at that time. It was just pre-military, and it came up with Jimmy who. That was his whole campaign, and I thought, okay, Jimmy who, what does that mean? Jimmy who? What it means that he came out of nowhere and nobody really knew him and blah, 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 blah. And he was, they made him look like the blue collar guy who was going to come to save America. And I think worse now is that Biden took pages from his playbook and created his own playbook and made it even worse. The one thing that Jimmy Carter can say is, hey, y'all can't blame me anymore, as being that guy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But you think about it. Things, and I was in the military. So I went in the military in 1980. And it was right as the hostage crisis was going on. And I remember we were chalking up. We were told to be on standby, that we were to be ready to go at any given time. And when Reagan was being sworn in that morning, and we were all relieved when he was being sworn in, because then we heard, well, they're starting to release the hostages. Yeah. And we thought, wow, because we just knew we were going. And then Anwar Sadat was assassinated, and that was a global, that was a nightmare, because that was an internal, his own military shot and killed him. And so when you look back to the world back then, the world hasn't, the mindset of the world hasn't changed. And we, they've gotten worse, but we're still treating it like it's old school way they do things. We're not, I just don't think our country at this point in time is looking ahead. Like you said, they're still staying kind of status quo, thinking this is the way we do business, when there's so much out there that we can grab and do and perfect, the things that we need to be doing, we're not doing. Our intel, when you're pulling people out of certain areas, and like Afghanistan, when you've created years of intel. I've got a friend who worked for DOD. So working at the DOD, um, he worked, and he was not an American citizen at that time. He was contract. He was from Afghanistan. His father was a well-known doctor. His mother was well-known at a college, and they pretty much had to flee.
Mhm.
And he had a hit put out on him because he was working for the United States government. So these people there that were doing this all along the way, that put themselves in jeopardy, um, of course they knew it was a dangerous task. But when you look at, we go over there and we nation build, but we do this so many places and they try and blow it up all over again. And then we go back in and we nation build. And, if you look at Haiti and all these places, we try to become the world, the global police, and that makes it, that's not our role in the world. We
But
lead
we're not
with power and strength.
But we're not even doing that well.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's one thing to say if we're the global police, then why aren't we policing? Here's the problem.
Right.
North Korea doesn't do what it's doing without the okay of China.
Right.
And they don't do it to the degree that they've been doing it unless they didn't have anything to fear in terms of reprisals. They don't
Exactly.
think Biden's going to do anything. That's why they did it. They didn't think that he's going to step up or do anything of substance, because he didn't do anything of substance against Russia and Putin. And we're having this economic proxy war that is failing because it was a dumb idea to start with, and it was improperly executed on top of that. I mean, we told them everything we were going to do, and we're scaling up over time. And that's not how you win that. And we're spending, here's my big problem with Ukraine. And we now see in the new budget that we're adding another $40 billion that we're sending on top of the $60 billion that we've already sent. We're the number one nation giving them money and weapons. And we know that the weapons are starting to appear in other countries, in particular. Gee, what does that have to do with maybe the Lord of War, Victor Bout, being But now we see weapons are going into other places. The money is disappearing because we don't know where it's going. And they're saying, give us more. And here's my big question about this. We could put in $100 billion so far, win or lose, whether the Ukraine wins or the Ukraine loses. What do we get? We're not going to get the money back. Ukraine doesn't have anything to give us the money back. So we're never getting this money back.
Exactly.
What else can we get it?
Yeah. We get a powerful globe in a little bit. It's I call it shared anger from all these countries, where they direct everything toward the country here. But when you look at, you talk about where the weapons come from. Look at what we left in Afghanistan. Look at, we should have destroyed everything before leaving. Stockpiles, blow them up, take the helicopter. We don't take out a little computer part of a helicopter. We take out the components and we blow it out. We blow them up, take them out and blow them up. We don't let them to where they can even fly them. Because all they're going to do is give it over to China and places like that to look at our technology. And China's smart enough to look at it and tell exactly what it is.
They'll just jury rig it. Yeah. They'll just jury rig something so that it doesn't do everything that it's supposed to do. They don't care. Does it do half of what it was supposed to do? That's more than what they had before.
Yeah. Can you imagine these terrorists flying around with their own army of helicopters? And then we're sitting on the sideline going, well, that doesn't affect us. Well, it does, because we provided them their arsenal. I don't, for the life of me, and you look back and we have an administration that just sits back kind of like at the border. Well, we'll just sit back and let it happen. And we'll say that we're protecting everybody while we're not. But we'll kill every process that keeps people safe. And yet, border officers are being killed all the time. I mean, it's Biden travel flights. It's basically the Biden flight system. If you want to come to America, you just tackle into the Biden travel agency. he employs these warlords and these coyotes and the cartel, and we'll just bring some drugs at the same time. We'll kill two birds at one stone, plus kill Americans to get us inside. And and I'll tell you the thing that people better watch out, because they're starting to lace this marijuana with
Well,
fentanyl.
they've been doing that for a while.
But the grand scale of it is so much bigger. And it if it doesn't kill you, it can cripple you. It might leave you in coma, but you won't be around for long. And when you see officers that are stopping vehicle stops and they're collapsing at the scene because of fentanyl that they can't hardly see the particle dust of, that's significant. That's a game changer, and that's when we have to step in and I'm going to be really bold in what I say here. And it's not going to make a lot of people happy, but this is our America. The last time I checked,
Yeah.
And we have a right to expect our government to protect us. And if they fail to do that, we have something in the Constitution that says we have the right to do that. And if our government lets us down, we have a right to address it in a manner in which we need to address it for the times. And I think our forefathers knew that this was going to happen because greed of politicians lining their pockets and their bank accounts are many times more important than the people they represent. And when you have an administration that has all these investments out there, and money is in and money's out, and I mean it's really clear where whether it's the electric car systems, they want to yell windmill, things like that. I get all that, but they're capitalizing off the poor and the people who are in position that they can't advance a quality of life that they need to. And it's families that are in crisis. Look at what's going on with these families in our country alone. Now you go down to the border and look what's going down there with the families down there. They're having to fight for livelihood down there to even protect their property. Now, just my thought. If they said, "Oh well, Rick, you're going to be president. You're going to be president for 30 days." First thing I'd do, I'd old school it. I'd go out there and I'd start putting up a buffer. And in front of that wall and in front of that fence, in front of that concertina wire, wherever it was, I'd have a 15-foot buffer. And that buffer would say, "Don't step that's your final warning right there. Don't cross it." And I don't care who you send through that buffer. Don't send your children. Don't send people to that buffer. And then that wall, I would use that hot sunshine, and I would use the ability to create that energy, and I'd have an electric charge on that wall. You wouldn't get close enough to that wall because you know what it would do. You're not hurting them. They're making the choice to do that. Well, they would then stop their kids over there. Now, that's how I look at it, because I think we are in such a state of affair down there that these people down there are being victimized coming to the wall. Their own people. And the only way to stop that is to do something very on a grand scale.
Well, we have to do a big thing to stop them, because all we've been doing so far is welcoming them and giving them reasons. I mean, right now, it was last month, the practical progressive Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, requested $1 billion from the federal government, $1 billion, so that he could pay to put illegal aliens in hotels, spending 2 times the average income of American citizens. He wanted to spend over $60,000 a year per illegal alien to make sure that they can live in a hotel when we got to struggle to pay our bills.
Oh yeah. That's
stupid.
That's socialism going wild.
That's not saying, I should go to. Let's see, I could go to America, live in a hotel, and get paid for breaking and entering into the nation, or I could stay in my little crap hole country, which is starving me to death, and if the government isn't trying to shoot me. Gee, which one do I think is a better life?
Right. I mean, it's built-in welfare. It's what he wants. I mean, it's just what the cities want. That's what they desire. They don't want to create jobs They want to create excuses and they want to create dependence because they get more money for people being dependent upon them because they know the administration in office now is going to open up that wallet at all costs. And whether they print money or they don't print money or how they get the money, they really don't care because everybody in the country is going to have to pay for that money coming out of the federal government. That's why this was 87,000 IRS agents. They're not there to be friends with you. They're not carrying guns because they're not going to come in here and try to tax your firearms. And when you don't pay the enormous taxes on your firearms, you think that they're not going to use their firearms to try and get yours because you didn't pay tax on it. There's always a stick and a reason behind what they do. And I'd say don't underestimate the sneakiness of a government or the forethought of what they think they can get away with if you allow it. Because what they do is they think that people are going to just, and they trained everybody to say, here, wear this. This is your new world now. Do what we tell you to do. Shut down, sit up. We're going to feed you what we want to feed you. You take it and live with it. And then when we get ready to do what we want to do, we will have had you trained to do what we want to do.
Well, that's what they've been doing to the schools. Look at the schools.
Yeah.
We have the CRT, intersectionality. We've been teaching our kids that that the police are bad and they have to obey the government, and the government's smarter than anyone else, and the government has all the answers.
Right.
The government are people. People don't have all the answers.
That's right.
And we should always question the government. I mean, when we don't question the government, we don't find out things like the Twitter files. We don't find out Mark Zuckerberg is working with the FBI to silence people, that they're picking big and small people to suppress them and to silence them. And then we've got a battle with big tech because just like your program, you couldn't mention things about what the Second Amendment actually says and what it actually is there for, which is sad because it's a document of our nation. It is our history. It is a fact. It isn't an opinion. It isn't relative. It's a fact of why it exists. And we can't really speak about that because the censors will shut us down for some arbitrary reason that we find out in the Twitter files. They just make up reasons knowing fully well this is not true. This is not real. But we don't want to hear that voice.
Right.
We can't have a nation when we can't trust what's happening with our government and the laws don't apply equally and consistently. You don't have a nation when you're doing that.
Well, I always tell somebody the government wants to play chess. Why they force everybody else to play with checker rules? They want to play the chess game and they want us to sit out and play checkers. They don't want us in the same game as they are. And the way they do that is they suppress the information through any means necessary. And that means, like you said, it doesn't matter, all the social networks, whatever. It's like the YouTube channel. I was running my YouTube channel. Things are going good. The next thing I know, everything's stopping. Even to the lighthearted things I'm doing. I'm thinking, wait a minute. And then people say, well, I haven't seen it. It hasn't popped up on my screen. And then I look at subscriptions. I got subscriptions up to yin yang. I couldn't even tell you how many it was now. And then one day I signed on, I got 50 subscribers. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? Then they had people who said, I couldn't even find you. I had to search and keep searching. They had to go to Google to find me, to click on the link in Google to get into YouTube to find out where I was in YouTube. So, shadow banning even went on in YouTube. So, it was like, what in the world is going on?
It's been happening big. It's all of these companies. Look at your latest. If you go to Google right now and you do a search on there, remember how they had pages 1 through how many, whatever you put in, and now it's one big long page. Do you know why they did that?
They didn't want you to say how far you were really down, did they?
Well, it's meant to distract you and discourage you from actually looking for the information, so that they control what you're going to see on that first page, which is their message, not necessarily what you want to find. And because you can't go page by page and first 3 pages are going to be crap sometimes, depending on what you're searching for.
Most of the time.
they've embedded the story. They put it deep
Mhm.
in. Okay, so I'll go to page 5 and start searching from there. No, 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 you can't do that. Now you got to scroll down, and you don't know how far you have to scroll down
Yeah.
before you start seeing the information that they don't want you to see, that they ranked lower. These are all tactics. This is propaganda tactics that we saw first done in the 1930s Germany, and they're
Yep.
doing it now. And they're telling us at the same time, oh, but it's all, this is better, this is good, this is for you.
We're
I
keeping you safe. This
Yeah,
is for your safety. Yeah. Whatever.
yeah, because
That's
I'm not smart enough that if I see something on TV, if someone's saying something, that I can't just turn the channel, that I can't just go to another web page. I mean, really, what you think I
well,
would?
it's like loading you up. It's like over in Germany when they were loading them up on the cars and then the railroad cars and the cargo and send them out. Tell them they were sending them off to a better life and a resort.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
yeah, to get them away from and the whole time you're sending them to the concentration camps where you know, to do what they were going to do there. And I just tell you, how, you know, we've got a government that's gone wild. That's what we've got. They
Mhm.
do what they want, when they want, how they want, and they don't feel like they owe explanation to anybody. And the rules that they make are not the rules that they're made in the days. They do more rules are made and done in the dark of the night than is ever done in the sunlight of the day. And I think, right, wrong, or indifferent, how people feel or don't like Trump or how it is, I think that what he did us, our nation, a great service when he showed the underbelly of our government and the things that they do that they did not want anybody to know about and thought no president would ever come out and show that existence of what was really going on in our country.
No member of the establishment has ever revealed as much, and it's in part it was because he didn't actually do anything. It's them. They were
Yeah.
so hyper insane about what he could potentially do. They
Hmm.
actually revealed it on their own. I mean, he didn't. They were so constant with their attack and saying he's a demon. He has to be a demon, and they had
Hmm.
to twist every law and break and violate so many rules and
Yep.
laws. It made it apparent to us that, oh, wait a minute, this isn't him. This is them. They're doing,
Hmm.
and it's really upsetting. And that's what we see going on right now. And going into 2023, it's not getting better. I mean, now they're talking about, yeah, they want to reform Section 230 to increase the
Yeah.
censorship, to give us less free speech, taking it
Hmm.
away from private businesses, which aren't really private because they're getting paid by the FBI. They have the FBI working
Oh
in these
yeah.
businesses.
Get
So
right in with them. I mean, they're running the show.
yeah, there's no separation anymore. It's the government. The government's in these private businesses saying, "Oh, but we're totally independent, but we're
Yeah.
we
Right.
have weekly meetings about who you should suppress."
Well, Chinese have state media too. You know, I mean, now we've well, again, we have followed their lead in how we do. This is the same thing that Chinese have done to their own people. Their government have been doing this for day one of their existence in any form that they had. So while we're a young country, this might be new to some of us, but it's old news to the rest of the world. I mean, that's why the world looks at it like, oh, it's no big deal. No big deal. It's their country, no big deal. But the reality is, then they come to us and want billions and billions of dollars. And who controls that? People don't like the word deep state. Call it what you want to call it. Call it the great state. Call it the green state. Call it the purple state. The bottom line is, it's a deep rooted, corrupt organizations, and they have organized our government as deeply as corrupt as they could possibly be. Call it, like I said, people said the deep state don't exist. Well, maybe not the official title of anything, but does deep state have a face? And that's the argument: is who is the face of the deep state? Well, it's the one who wields the most power.
Well,
And
it's
and think
people
about
who
it.
are embedded.
Yes, people who are embedded. If you go back and you look at the current administration, how far they go back, and how many along the way that they've touched and been involved in, you don't gain that much power and stay in that long unless you embed yourself right in the middle of that to become that you become the broker. You may not be the king, but you are the king maker. You
Well,
become a broker, you
yeah.
know. And and I'm gonna say this, I think Biden has been the broker for a long time. You know, I think
He's
him,
a useful idiot. He's a
yeah,
useful idiot. He's
and exactly that he's the yeah, and he's taught his son well. That's what they've been doing for years, and that's how you broker these deals. That's how you create these deals. Is you have somebody who goes out front and they look like Joe Blow America. Everything is good to go. And the reality is they're slipping in the back door of the next door neighbor's house. And why is he going in there? Well, there's an ulterior motive. We all know that what that might be, but he's doing it in every neighborhood. He's just doing it in a different manner to different people.
well,
It crosses across. It affects everybody, no matter you look at it.
well, that's why we see things like Kamala as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Harris is useless. Everywhere she has ever gone on behalf of the United States, she's made the situation worse.
Yep.
South Korea, Russia, everywhere, South America, everywhere she's gone, she makes the situation worse because she's an idiot. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's supposed to be in charge of our southern border. She's been there once, and after she went there, it got worse.
Right.
So we have her being coupled with Biden, who can't remember where he's supposed to sit. I mean, you've seen the cue card. We see you sit here.
It's sad. Yeah.
Okay, this is how bad it is. So, can we really say that we trust that leadership and that level of leadership when we have one guy who has to be told where to sit, and we have a woman who, wherever she goes, she makes things worse? These are the two extremes that are supposed to be the face of our nation. And then we wonder, gee, I wonder why all these countries, why China's saying they want to go into Taiwan, why Russia wants to go into Ukraine, why North Korea is threatening South Korea and Japan. Why is this happening now? And we have Iran in the background giving weapons to everyone because they don't care. They want us all dead.
Right.
We don't believe what they believe.
Yeah.
No leadership.
To me, if you look at those two on the main scale, it's kind of like watching the scene from Saturday Night Live, old school, when Samurai Water, when it was really worth watching. Now it's just they every now and then they'll cross the divide a little bit, but then they run back to the other side. So I quit watching them, but it's kind of like somebody said. I was talking to somebody today. I said, watching those two, president, vice president, I'd say Ren and Stimpy maybe, or Lewis and Martin maybe. How about Abbott and Costello?
Those guys were all good.
Yeah,
those
exactly.
Were all good people.
Yeah, so and then you got the Three Stooges.
Yeah,
I mean, so when you these are characters that for years we would watch and laugh at. Problem is these characters that run our country, you can't laugh at them because what they're doing is not funny. What they're doing is self-serving, and it has no benefit to America other than you could not have put together a team any better to help to destroy this country.
No, wait until 2024.
Oh,
Pete Buttigieg is going to run.
Yeah.
Buttigieg's going to be vice president.
Man who can't keep the planes in the air and knew a while back that they had to do something to take care of that to kind of get them in the right. He got to come to work first.
He's useless.
He's just But everybody they picked was a favor. Everybody they picked was a front to government. It was all the alphabets. Let's pick all the alphabet people and put them in places, and that's what we're going to do. Never mind that they're idiots and they can't run the show. How bad can it be? Well, you see how bad it can be.
Well, they're falling apart. Everything's falling apart because they have no foresight. They have no understanding of the consequences of their actions.
No.
everything they do is apparently, and we've seen this real time in 2022, we saw it. Everything was about, here's the next election. So we need to do just enough to get to the
Mhm.
next election. And then they're on to the next, but they have no understanding of the consequence of that. Oh, we got
Right.
a comment. We got a comment. Hi. Oh, no, that's something else. So I find that interesting, but that's why, and I sent you a link earlier,
Mhm.
which is a bill proposal.
Right.
My answer to part of this is we need to restore the confidence in our elections, and we need to restore our control over the elections.
Absolutely.
So I wrote up this bill,
Mhm.
which is a framework for an election reform, which 62% of everyone in America, Democrats and Republicans, agree that we need to restore our confidence in our elections. That's why we have
Mhm.
voter apathy. It's not because people can't get out and vote. They can. They don't care to. They don't want to vote because they don't want to vote for these people who are obviously lying to us. So how do we get a return back to our election system to have
Mhm.
confidence in our elections, to motivate people to go out and vote?
Right.
Well, I wrote up a bill, and I'm working with a group called the Liberty First Foundation, friends of mine.
Right. I'm looking at it now.
Yep. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm sending that to all 537 members of Congress. That's the 100 in the Senate. That's the 435 voting members in Congress and the 2 non-voting members. I'm going to send it to every single one of them, because this, I believe, will make the difference. It will
Mhm.
bring us back to being involved and putting control of the elections back in our hands. It's part of what the bill says, and I call it the restore confidence in elections and stimulate voter participation.
Right.
What it does is it's in part the mandate that every position, every elected office in a year will have a guaranteed debate
Mhm.
with questions for that debate that are decided by the public months ahead of time, so
Right.
that so every candidate, they can't say I didn't know what day the debate was going to be. They know.
Right.
And it's going to
Right.
be decided beginning of the year. It's going to be published and announced. The questions are going to come from the public, not from the news media, not from special interests, not from the parties. It comes
Right.
from the public in that community, and they're going to also determine who gets up on the stage, the
Right.
presentation in that community. So if it's your local, what do you want to call it? The county executive. That race, you will know on January 1st, you'll know exactly what day there's going to be a debate for the candidates for your county executive seat. The questions are going to come from the public about that election
Right.
for that
Mhm.
position, and they're all questions coming from the public. And that means you're involved and
Right.
you're controlling this, and you have a vested interest. And it takes it all out of the hands of the politicians. It takes the hands out of the members of the news media. I think this is going to
Right.
be important. And I can't wait to hear how the members of Congress are going to turn around and say, "Oh, we're not going to support this," because I'm going to say, "Why?"
Right. Right. How many have you got? Any of the ones now looking at it that's looking at it very seriously, that they're willing to
No one's willing to
sponsor
say
a bill?
anything. No one said anything yet.
Everybody's
I haven't
because
sent it out yet,
okay.
but there
Yeah.
has been one or two who know it exists.
Well, yeah, because when you send it out, let me know because I'll be able to reach out to some of the folks here too.
That's what I would love to see. Is it's going to go out to every member, and I'm going to have the receipts that I sent it to everyone. So if anyone ever wants to say, "Well, you didn't send it to me," here's the receipt.
And you know, they have a team that checks their emails religiously.
Oh yeah, but this is going to be mailed.
Oh yeah, but then here's the
We're
other
gonna
thing
have
too,
this stuff out.
because I'd send it both ways, and I'll tell you why. Because I always hear that if they get 7 emails anywhere on a
Mhm.
topic, they start looking at it because if 7 people send it, because the average person will not send in a letter or an email if they're frustrated,
Right.
unless it personally affects them and they're mad about it and it's costing them. Short of that, they don't get them. They get a lot of complaints, phone calls, and they'll start looking at it. But if you start putting it in writing and they get so many, they'll start responding. Of course, they got that silly generic letter. Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate your concern. Well, we look at all this, and they address everything they're doing except for the question that you're asking.
of course.
And that's pretty much a standard letter that's recommended. That's yeah, it keeps them out of the hot water, and it says, hey, well, it says people around go, oh yeah, he responded to me, yeah, but what did he or she say? I
Nothing.
can respond to everybody, but if they'll say anything, it's not worth the paper it's or email it's sent on.
It's
It's
always
just what it is.
boilerplate. It's a boilerplate
Yeah,
response form that they send
yeah,
out. I talk to members of Congress on a regular basis,
yeah.
uh, both in regular correspondence as well as people that I know because I've been
Hmm.
doing this 17 years. And it's just the boilerplate response because they
Right,
don't want to answer anything. And they assume you're just going to let it go.
right, and that's what they do because it's easier to ignore it and it goes away than it is to try and address it. Short of it being a massive issue on a national level, um, they pretend it doesn't exist. Again, back onto the border stuff. Look at they don't have to send letters because all they have to do is watch television and acknowledge. But they know it's there. They're just not going to acknowledge it because then they have to do something.
Well,
They
they
got to
don't
do
need it.
something.
Yeah,
And,
they want to avoid that.
and they really don't care because And somebody told me that we were talking. I said, well, they in their mind, this is creating future Democrat voters. This is creating future power and control for one party. And but I really believe that while they may be, they'll probably gain a lot of that. But there's going to be some people that are coming across that border a little bit more conservative to not willing to give up certain amount of rights when they get here.
Well,
You know,
historically,
yeah. So it's going to be interesting.
historically, Hispanics are more conservative,
Hmm.
as are most blacks are more conservative. They're voting Democrat because they're getting free stuff, but
Yep.
their social and cultural existence widely
Yeah.
is very conservative based. So they're not thinking about that aspect of it. Plus, most people, when they're coming to America, they know what they're coming for, and that's
Hmm.
not enslaved because they could have stayed in their own countries and done that. They're
Right.
coming for freedom. They're coming for the ability to have a freedom they can't get in their home.
Hmm.
So I think that
Exactly.
backfires on them. But
Oh yeah.
here's my thing for 2023. What are the Republicans going to do? See, we have this wonderful opportunity, blank slate. We know the Republicans control the House. We know they're going to do an investigation of Biden and Hunter. We know they're going to do that. And we know that they're not going to, well, they shouldn't vote for most of the things, the spending, the wasteful spending
Hmm.
programs, although they do that anyway. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
we passed the omnibus bill. We're sending $200 million to Pakistan to teach gender studies, which is 10
Yeah.
times what we sent in 2020. They don't care. It's a waste of money.
Yeah. They don't care what they're doing. It's just, it's the funny part is, I mean, it's like to study, you know, to study certain animals or actually there's no significant reason to study that except to give somebody some money from the government to say that they're working on this project. It
Yeah.
just, and they've done that with these grants for years. I mean, look at Fauci. He took money. I mean, he's been taking money for years. He just got caught doing it. But how many years has he been taking that money? I mean, how long has that how long has that existed? It's nothing new. It's just was found out during the pandemic stuff. So he's not changed. So how does a man like that worth the dollars he's worth when the money he made would never put him to that kind of value? Personal
Yeah.
estimate of how much he's worth. There's something, as the old fashioned say, there's something rotten in Denmark somewhere.
No, he's a scary individual, but
Hmm.
he's indicative of what we see. And when people are talking about the deep state, well, that's what you're talking about. You're
Hmm.
talking about a guy like Dr. Fauci, someone who's been there for decades, and he's been involved in policymaking for decades. And, it scares me that this man is so obviously flawed in what he's doing and the way that he has been doing it.
Mhm.
And it's been happening, and it's destroying so many lives for no reason. For
Yeah.
no reason. This is why we need to have a plan. We need the Republicans to come up and say it's not enough to say, oh, we're going to investigate Biden, and Democrats are going to continue to investigate January 6th.
Oh yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
need, neither of those things should be happening right now.
No, and there's enough on our plate, but I think it's just like this. It's because of the way the January 6th was investigated. The Republicans have to kind of come back and say, wait a minute, here's the truth. Here's what we're finding out. Here's what we know. And I get all that, but they're going to have to spend more time at one point or the other to tell us what we're going to do for the future. What is our plan to get through all this that's going on now? What is our plan?
That's the thing I want to see is what's the plan? What are the things we're going to actually try and protect?
Right. And that's just kind of and first of all, we need to make sure that we have everybody sitting there just willing to protect the Constitution for what it is, and understand that the Constitution is not an ever-changing document that you could change every time a social issue comes up. We don't change based on social issues, our Constitution, and I think that's what they want. They want judges to legislate from the bench to make decisions for states, when in reality in North Carolina, the voting and all that, we had a voter right bill. We voter ID bill. Everything went down. The people voted for it. And the Democrats started suing because they didn't like the way it came out. And it always gets to a point. Now, Supreme Court comes in, they don't want to touch those areas. They want to leave it to the states. But the states, they can regulate, do what they want. But even if it's unconstitutional, it's basically what our courts are saying. Even for what if it was unconstitutional the way we do it. But the North Carolina Constitution is the Constitution. It allows the states to set up their own voting system. Right. I personally, when you look at the state versus the federal, the question would be simply is when the state says, we're going to make a decision, oh, by the way, the federal vote's going to be part of that process. You're talking about two different type of votes. You're talking about the federal vote for president. You're talking about one for the state. So the question would be simply is how can the state supersede a federal document like the Constitution to create their own, or how can the federal government come back and try to do something that the Constitution says they can't do?
Well, I don't care, because people don't read the Constitution. We're talking about the 9th and 10th Amendments,
right?
The 10th being states' rights. The states have these rights separate of the government. People have, part of the problem is, here's something. People don't realize the Constitution is a series, it's a negative rights document.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is the Constitution is created to limit the power of government, not people. It was never meant to limit the power or the rights of people or states. It's meant to limit the power of the federal government.
Absolutely.
You get the corruption that we have right now, and that corruption destroys everything that we have going on.
Oh, absolutely. And I got a book I always like to read. I'll read it up to you now. I'm not making all kinds of noise. It's called "We the People in Our Defense: The Bill of Rights in Action." And I think a lot of people they see these books, but if you don't take time to read them and some of the things in there, and it's always a great reminder because we don't always go and remember the Constitution word for word, but we can go somewhere and find out what it pertains to, how it pertains to it, and there's nothing in here that says that you can wake up one day and decide that the Constitution doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to anybody. And the government, the government It doesn't give them, like I said, it doesn't give them the all-encompassing power to ram down your throat anything they want to do and call it the federal government decides. It's not the way it works.
No.
And like you said, it gives us the right as a people. Like you said, to call our government into question when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're hiding behind their concept of their alphabet of what that Constitution looks like because of a certain attorney or lawyer or a judge that's been appointed that decides that, well, yeah, it's time to change. It's not an ever-changing document, but it should be. Things were different back then. Well, if you look at back when the forefathers and everybody, I mean, they fought like hell for this Constitution. They didn't just walk in there one day and say, this is the way we're going to do it. Everybody jump up here and sign.
No,
They fought like hell for those things. And when they finished that document, look at the signatures they got. Our forefathers worked hard on that document, and they were
proud
diligent.
of it.
Yeah, they were diligent. They knew they had a vision that in this country that many may not have had then, but they had a vision. And when we take vision, if you got a vision about something and you're putting it together, and if you can get 56, 57, whatever on these documents in a government to decide these names, that's pretty powerful, because look what's going on now in government. People aren't building it out in such a way. I mean, it's just now they look at what's instant gratification. It's just what is now. It's what I see in front of me, and we're not going to care about our children. We're not going to care about our grandchildren or their grandchildren. We're not going to care about future generations unless we want to talk about climate change. Now we can do that now because that's a religion now. Climate change has become a religion.
It's always been a religion because there's no. Why I would call climate change a religion is because there's no science or fact behind it. Science is based on here's a question, here's the observable facts.
Mm-hmm.
So my theory is either proven or disproven by the facts
Right.
and experimentation. Climate change has never got a single theory correct. Every hypothesis they have ever put forward has been wrong. Observable fact has always proven them incorrect. It was global famine, global cooling, global heating. Now it's climate change, which is everything. They never get it right. All of their data has been wrong every single time. So that's a religion. When you believe something, even though everything that you can observe is telling you that's absolutely wrong and not true and does not exist, and you believe it anyway, well, that's faith. And if you're talking about faith, well, that's religion.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, it is kind of like it makes you wonder when people sit around and they go, "Oh, what's our next target? What should what? Oh, by the way, and how much money can we make off of this target? Because we might get these groups going, and we'll get all this going. Everything that they do is based on the dollar. I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah, but it's ridiculous. I mean, here's the thing about climate change that no one really ever thinks about, and it's real important. So America is supposed to lead the world in climate change and making these changes to just.
Right.
Okay. Because we have to be responsible. Except we already do that. We are 6 times better than all of Europe combined. Matter of fact,
we are.
No one else comes this close. We already are leading the world in climate change. We're not the problem. The problem is China and India that don't care. And no other country is hitting their targets. They have the climate summits. No country in the world is even close to hitting their targets except the United States. So since we're leading the world and we're already doing this better than everyone else in the world, why is this a problem we have to deal with? This is a problem every other country has to deal with. We're there already. We're already doing our job.
Right.
So why are we freaking out? Because America's got to do more. What? We already did more.
But we're doing more, and we're continuing to do more, and we do more every year. Why China doesn't even have to even try to even attempt to do anything until 2035 or 2050, and by then, heck, most of the people who negotiated all this concept are going to be gone anyway, and they're going to do it all over. To me, it's a nonstop evolving process that just never goes away, because what they're preaching today, they were preaching way back when, and you just you know the the time, energy, and the value that it gives us is so limited when you look at what it really does in a million years. Even if in a million year a 0.01% heat factor goes up, well, I, that's a long time to worry about. I mean,
Yeah.
just doesn't. Yeah, and here's the other thing is, if climate change was such a monster, um, you know, when we were having hurricanes since the beginning of time, who was driving the vehicles then?
Yeah. Right.
Who was had the big industrial power stacks of pollution then that
We've
was
already had
causing?
droughts. We've had floods. We've had
Yeah, I mean,
hurricanes. It's
so
called the world.
yeah,
It's such a arrogant thing to say, well, we can control the climate.
uh,
I was talking on a podcast earlier today. I do a live stream during the day, and I had this guy who told me, no, he's trying to tell me that we're running out of oil. We've only got 46 years of oil left. And I said, you know what? I've heard that. I'm 55 this year, and I had this guy tell me I've heard this since I was like 10. People have been saying we've only got 50 years left. Only got 50. Since I've been 10, they've been
mhm.
saying only 50 years of oil left. And yet that's not true. And his answer to me is, but no, but the scientists know how much oil is in the ground. I'm like, wait a minute, we don't know what's at the bottom of the ocean. And you're telling me that we know how much oil is below the bottom of the ocean? That makes no sense
No, it doesn't.
because they don't think about this. They don't think about these things and like, well, they said this. Yeah. Okay. Think about it for half a second further than what they just said. It makes no sense.
No, and I think about that. I think, okay, well, here we are. We are the richest country in the world, but we're the poorest at at handling it.
Yeah.
We have all this at our fingertips, as the previous administration showed, as we were number one in energy. Things were booming. If we needed things to boom, we needed things to boom during the COVID process. Then to that, probably, or more than likely, that would have been able to keep our country and running like it needed to do. And but when you come in and you shut off, I mean, you shut off a water valve and then blame the people because they're thirsty.
Yeah.
Let me turn off the water fountains in every school and then blame the kids for being thirsty. That makes absolutely. And see, and you do that, then you can train those children, because you can just turn that valve on a little time, no matter where you get the water from, and they'll start believing you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's kind of the Castro thing. You remember
Mhm.
they always did the ice cream game. Pray to God, pray to Castro. Which one gives you the ice cream? Um, that's kind of the when you look back, that's the same thing that our schools are doing now in indoctrination.
Yeah.
It's the same theory as Castro. So all they're doing is they're taking the techniques from Fidel Castro, implementing it into our school system, and voila, there you go. CRT, right? Boom. There it is. And it's all
Yeah.
like a sweep in the nation. And thank God that we've got parents. If COVID did anything, it allowed the parents to find out what the school systems were doing to our America's children. It showed that there was an upheaval from the left that was going after our children. It's kind of like you're watching the horror movie, and something gets infested into their mind, kind of like The Exorcist. What the Exorcist showed. The different things is their heads won't spin, but their brains are going out of control based on what they're told. and what they're told they have to believe, not what was true, but what the alphabet soup of the day was to tell them that they had to believe. And
Yeah.
we don't, again, and I know this is an old topic, but we don't need to sit back and let our school systems and the people we don't even know tell our children what they need to think about society and the way we live. And I think that COVID was something that they knew they could use, but it wasn't something that they knew that was going to force it was going to force them out to bring them to light. And I
Well,
think it did.
I think the whole pandemic issue was instrumental in highlighting how kids aren't being taught to think; they're
Hmm.
being taught to obey.
Right.
There's a big difference. They're being taught don't ask questions, just obey, just accept whatever we're telling you as we're telling it to you, and believe it on faith alone.
Hmm.
What happened to critical thinking? The
Hmm.
reason why America is so great today, why we have so much wealth and comfort, and this is the best time in the world. As much as people want to complain and say, oh, everything's miserable and we hate America, this is the best time
Hmm.
to live in the
Yep.
history of humanity.
Hmm.
You have more information, you have more freedom. You want to talk about gay rights? You can't get more gay rights. You can't have more,
Yeah.
whatever your special interest is. You can't have more acknowledgement and respect and action on your special interest than exists right this second in
Right.
history. No other time. And they're
Right.
trying to teach our kids that's a bad thing.
Right. And again, it gets back to when you're talking about the different rights that people have. We as Americans have a right to believe what we do. We have a
Mhm.
right to do what we do, feel how we do, take the action we do, as long as we're not violating any kind of laws.
Mhm.
And that's all right. It doesn't matter what it is, whether I agree or disagree. So while they push that concept, that the left likes to push that concept and take what they say on faith. But if we try to use our faith, or I try to use my faith to stand tall, they want to sue you and take you to the Supreme Court for it.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's kind of it's kind of like I've always said, and I've asked ministers, preachers alike, when you're standing out there and you are not saying anything, and under the abortion laws and abortion things that are going on there, and you sit on the sideline as a preacher and you don't bring it to your congregation, and you basically say, well, I have to be careful with my congregation because everybody has a different opinion about that. What would happen if Jesus would have said, I have to be careful with the public because everybody has a different opinion like that? It just, or now all of a sudden they're not going to stand there and fight for the rights of a child, but they will go to the prison and stand outside the prison and fight for the rights of a killer to not be um, brought
One,
through the death sentence.
see, none of that makes sense. And here's the thing, because
Yeah.
I have to be careful of someone's because someone's feelings might get hurt. I might offend. When was that ever a concern for anyone? Oh, you may not agree, and
So we just don't agree.
it's like, but they don't agree, and
Yeah.
how's that change my life? I don't care. You don't agree or you don't like it. Okay, and and that's the thing that no one ever says is, and it's funny because I have a bunch of friends, and they're whenever they do an imitation of me, they're riffing on me. Their answer to everything is and because
And yeah.
like because they know when they'll say something to me, it's like, but Mike, you should be concerned. Okay, it's your problem, and
Yeah.
why
Yeah. It makes such a,
and so what? But they don't like that. I don't care, and
yeah. See, mine is, and your point is, that's
yeah.
and your point is, so people say that, but you're right. And it's just, I think that, you know, just because I don't agree with somebody doesn't mean that I'm not going to sit across the table and have dinner with them.
Well, it
It
doesn't make
doesn't
them
mean,
evil. No, it
no,
just
no.
means I don't agree.
Yeah, I've got friends right now that we don't agree. I've got good friends right now. I've got attorneys that are very liberal because they tend to be anyway. that are very liberal about things. And boy, we just get tied into it on Facebook and converse. It doesn't matter. But guess what? We can pick up the phone and call each other and say, hey, man, I got an issue. Can you help me on this? Or can you check on that? And that's because we understand that we may not agree on most things, but the things that we can agree on is that we're still friends and we can help each other as long as we can and without injury to yourself or others. Help people without injury to yourself or others and you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
When we were kids, we could disagree and we still had our friends. Why is it as adults we have to all believe the same thing? That's not called being an adult. That's not a human being. That's a clone. That's a slave.
You make me laugh because
slaves think like that. Oh, we have to all believe the same thing because we don't have a choice. You're a brain dead slave if you believe that. That's not a human being.
Well, it's kind of like when you're growing up and you're picking teams for something. I'll take Joe or I'll take so and so, and the last man standing is like, oh heck, I got to take him. Yeah. Oh man, and that person gets in, and then as they grow, they learn, and they're not always the last one picked. Why? Simply because they are learning and they're growing and they're following it. They may not be as good, but they find out what their strengths and their weaknesses are. I mean, just like I used to tell the people I coach in basketball, you may not be a great shooter, but you can drive that ball and pass it. You're a great passer, and you can drive it to these, what position ever you play.
Right.
And so I've always kind of capitalized on what's your strength and what's your weaknesses. And I always ask people, even in law enforcement, capitalize on your strength, and work on your weaknesses. You'll always have a weakness, but if you keep going day in and day out, you can build on that to where it becomes that it's not the weakness and something else may pick up that you realize, well, I'm not so bad at this, or wow, I've really done really well here, but now I understand now it's a bigger picture. So
wouldn't it be wonderful if our politicians followed that rule and said, hey, let's look at America and we know what our strengths are. We know what our weaknesses are. Let's focus on that.
Yeah.
Instead of the politics and trying to get elected in the next election, and think of how much better the world would be.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it would be, because I have a friend of mine we've been in business with, and we were law enforcement together, and he worked for a city agency. I worked for the county. We formed an organization, and in this organization, we have different opinions. And what we found out is we could sit there as a board, as a group. We sit there as a team and we just have these conversations and we just go at it. We go at it. And we know when we come out of there, we have to have one face, one group. We're on the same team, and we go after what is the strengths. And then we decide that what we can agree on, and then we come back and deal with the things that we weren't agreeing on. Because get the easy stuff out of the way and then come back and concentrate on the other stuff. And what we found is that my weakness is his strength, and my strength is his weakness on different things. And together, we have a different way of doing things. But anyway, this has been a great conversation because time got away from us. That's for sure.
Oh,
I'm sitting there looking. Time flew. We're about here an hour and 25 minutes. I'm thinking hour show.
Yeah, I just got the high sign. I'm like, oh wait, what? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I was sitting here looking. I wasn't even looking at time. But anyway, it gets back to no matter how you look at things, we all look at it through a different window. Mm-hmm. My window, my is going to be different than yours, and that's just the way it is. We'll always agree to disagree, and I've been on some of these shows from other folks, and I think, boom, and I'll say something. Well, we agree on other things, but we don't agree on certain things. But we all have the conservative mindset. All I say is that our new House of Representatives in Washington, they need to take a page out of that lesson, learn something out of that book, because what they're doing now is pure silly of all the negotiating they're trying to do to elect a speaker. You ever notice that the Democrats go in there, they'll elect whoever they throw up there and they move on with the program.
Pretty
and
much.
they go, no matter how bad it is, they're gonna move on with it.
Well, that's
So
why Hakeem Jeffries is in charge now.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
part
That
of
is
the Progressive Caucus.
that's a nightmare.
Oh, yes.
Boy, anyway, that's a whole new story. So we
True.
could talk for days on that one. But look, Mike, I appreciate you coming in, and you've always been, a great asset to have on the show, and I've enjoyed it. We've had some funny shows. I think one of the ones we had with the other week was I think we laughed from the start to the finish, which was really good. So I'll probably try that again and bring back Antoine back on the show and
Cool.
maybe add somebody else in there and it'll pick up again. But again, I want to say thank you very much for being here tonight because it's, starting off the new year, we have more in common across this country than we don't, and that we don't have in common. And I think if we all get together and focus on what's good for America, we can only make sure that America stays to us, we as the people, because after all, it's your America, it's my America. It doesn't belong to the government, it doesn't belong to the White House, it doesn't belong to the Congress, it doesn't belong to the Senate. It belongs to each and every one of us. And it's just been we're not perfect, but we're the best country there is today. And I'm proud of my country. I may get a little twisted and agitated with some of the politicians, but it is what it is. If we all agreed, who knows what it would look like? So we'd probably be goose stepping. You know what I mean? So
Pretty
that's
much.
just the way it is. Well, and I appreciate you coming on, Michael. This has been a great show. Again, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we do these shows, and it's an open venue to anybody who wants to be a guest on there. They can reach out to any of us, have the conversation. And I tell the folks on the left all the time, if you want to come on the show, come on. I won't deny you, and we'll have great conversations because through that and only that can we solve the problems across this country with each other.
Absolutely.
And that's just the way it goes. So for 2023, I'm hoping that we'll get some people to outreach to us and say, hey, look, I'd like to be on your show. I don't agree with you, but I'd love to talk to you about it. And I think anybody out there listening wants to do that, just shoot me an instant message or an email, and any of us, and we'll have the conversation to see if we can't make that happen. And let us always remember that we got law enforcement officers out there that have died in the line of duty. And pray for them, pray for their families,
Absolutely.
and pray for everybody else. And always remember, keep it real, keep it safe, know where you're going, what you're doing. Because whether you believe it or not, you got to be safe, you got to be real, and you never know when the wolf will be knocking at your door. You got to be ready for that. Don't give up the ship. Live to fight another day.
Absolutely.
So everybody have a great night, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.